standing for over 700 years, Leap Castle has witnessed so many atrocities and heartbreak, it may rip the breath from your chest in shock. Hey there, dissectors. Welcome back for another haunting episode which takes place in Ireland. Strap yourselves in, as this castle has such a bloody, horrific history. It can be no surprise that many residents never left, and they are pissed. In fact, this castle is so haunted, it attracts paranormal investigators from around the world. Originally built around 1250 by the O'Bannon clan, things seemed relatively chill for some time, like the calm before the storm, you might say. But then in the late 15th century, it came under the rule of the O'Carroll clan, and so began the castle's bloodthirsty journey. For years, the castle was passed from generation to generation of O'Carrolls, and in that time, there were murders aplenty. When Mulrooney O'Carroll died in 1532, the question of who would be the successor to the castle was hot on every family member's lips. It got so vicious that while one brother named Thaddeus, who was a priest, was performing mass one day, another brother named One-Eyed Teague O'Carroll stormed into the room. While everyone was taken aback by his sudden appearance, he took this opportunity to drive a sword into the back of his brother, who fell onto the altar and died. This room is now called the Bloody Chapel. Thought to be one of Leap Castle's earliest spirits, the priest's ghost has been seen for centuries, even when the castle was in ruins years later. But we'll get to that. People passing by have seen a light flickering in the window that suddenly goes out, while also smelling burnt rubber. His full-bodied apparition has been seen lurking in the stairwell of the area too. One of the most infamous murders that took place at the castle, many would also describe as the most treacherous. The O'Carroll clan decided to hire about 40 members of the northern McMahon clan to be taught new methods of warfare. After securing a huge victory over another rival clan, a feast was held at the castle. Sadly, while the drinks were flowing and merriment was in full swing, the O'Carrolls had poisoned the food, and every member of the McMahon clan who attended was killed. Why, you might wonder? Well, it's thought that it was simply to save having to pay the bill. And it wasn't just other men that the O'Carrolls had a problem with, but women too, especially if their advances were denied. There are a couple of stories about the spirit who is known as the Red Lady and how she came to her end. The most common one is that one of the O'Carroll men took a fancy to her, and after being viciously raped, she became pregnant. Locked away until she gave birth, the O'Carrolls then took the baby from her, killing it with a knife. Heartbroken and beaten down from months and months of abuse, the poor woman couldn't take any more and grabbed the knife, killing herself before she could be stopped. Another story goes that two brothers wanted her, and while they fought over the young woman, she took the opportunity to run. Sadly, they chased her down and stabbed her to death. Either way, you can imagine how angry her ghost is. Described as being tall and lean, with long brown hair and wearing a red dress. She is a spirit you never want to encounter, as she carries a dagger with her, which she raises above her head, as if about to kill the unsuspecting visitors to the castle. Another woman who the O'Carrolls killed during the 1500s is described very differently to the Lady in Red. She appears terrified and wears very little clothing. After screaming twice in horror, this poor woman then disappears into thin air. By the 1600s, ownership of Leap Castle was passed to the Darby family after the daughter of the head of the O'Carroll family fell in love with Captain Darby. They had a son called Jonathan, who is said to have hidden treasures upon the grounds of the castle during the English Civil War. After two servants helped him to hide his riches, he later turned around and murdered them, so that they would forever keep his secrets. But when Darby was later imprisoned for a few years for treason, it would appear that he forgot where he hid his treasure, and many believe it still remains undiscovered to this day. It was during this period that two young girls resided at Leap Castle, both meeting tragic ends. The first child is called Emily and died when she was 11 years old after falling from the battlements. This is something that many visitors have witnessed to this day, like she is trapped in that moment in time. Falling from the great height, but just before her body hits the ground, her spirit disappears. The other child is called Charlotte, and it would seem that in life either she was born with a deformity or her death caused her to have one. You see, her ghost has been seen dragging her deformed legs behind her. But these two children either knew each other in life or have found each other in death. Even though they live out their individual hauntings, they have been seen and heard playing in the hall and running up and down the stairs. Two other spirits thought to be from the same period are a governess, also referred to as the nanny, who is often seen with Emily and Charlotte, but there is also an old man who visitors have witnessed relaxing in a comfy armchair by the fireplace in the main hall. During the early 19th century, playing around with the occult became quite a popular pastime, and Mildred Darby was known for her dabbling, so much so that it is believed that the most evil spirit at Leap Castle today is due to her unleashing something truly malicious, an elemental spirit. This is a primitive ghost that likes to attach itself to a place and with devastating consequences. Mildred wrote about her experiences in her journal in 1909, stating, "I was standing in the gallery looking down at the main floor when I felt somebody put a hand on my shoulder. The thing was about the size of a sheep, thin, gaunt, shadowy. Its face was human, to be more accurate, inhuman. Its lust in its eyes, which seemed half decomposed in black cavities, stared into mine. The horrible smell, 100 times intensified, came up into my face, giving me a deadly nausea, and it was the smell of a decomposing corpse." Mildred's activities with the black arts seem to have awoken this spirit, but many believe it was just lying dormant from way back to the time of the Druids. Back then, people often used sorcery to protect sacred land, and this is the very land Leap Castle was built on. Even though it was active for a long time, it does appear the elemental spirit is dormant again, and hopefully it stays that way. For many years, the castle stayed in the hands of those who swore allegiance to the British Crown, which meant suffering for the local Irish community. So, in July 1922, the IRA burnt the castle to the ground, destroying much of it. The priest's house was also destroyed at this time, but even though it remains an empty shell, it certainly isn't vacant. A heavy-set man has been witnessed pushing a large barrel up the stairs of the house, and just as he gets to the top, the barrel rolls back down just before the man and barrel disappear. Mildred Darby also spoke about the priest's house, stating that before the fire, there was something paranormal going on. She said, "There is something heavy that lies on people's beds and snores. They feel the weight of a great body pressing against them in a room in the priest's house. A monk with a tonsure and cowl walks in at one window and out another." When workmen came to the castle after the fire to try and fix the place up, the oubliette was discovered, hidden behind a wall in a corner of the bloody chapel. Thought to have been used at the time of the O'Carrolls, no surprise there, when the dark hole was explored further, they uncovered something truly horrific. You see, there were many wooden stakes sticking up from the ground beneath the trapdoor, with skeletal remains still skewered on them. It took 3 cartloads to remove all the bones that were trapped there. It is believed that the O'Carroll clan would trick their prisoners or unsuspecting guests to stand where the trapdoor was hidden and then release the catch, sending their bodies hurtling towards a very unpleasant death. As the victims were dying from their wounds, the O'Carrolls would carry on with their day as if nothing had happened. Leap Castle remained a husk of its former self for many years until 1991, when the current owner, Sean Ryan, and his wife Anne took over ownership. Luckily, they've never had any dealings with the elemental, but have said that after a few early skirmishes, the family have managed to coexist with the many haunts that reside there. So, dissectors, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below on this historic location. I have to say that the O'Carroll clan was certainly a piece of work, don't you think? The other clans back then would be pretty vicious, but they took it to a whole other level. Anyway, I hope this episode finds you well, and if you celebrate the season, I hope you're getting ready for Christmas, which brings me to the topic of next week's episode, Krampus. As always, until next time, dissectors, stay safe out there.